Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana and UP President Danilo Concepcion finally had a dialogue 3 weeks since the revocation of the UP-DND Accord. Amid the recent price hikes, President Duterte orders a crackdown on pork hoarders and smugglers. The Liberal Party eyes Vice President Leni Robredo as their presidential bet for the 2022 polls. The Premier Volleyball League finds a new home on Cignal. And let's take a quick look at this year's nominees for the Golden Globe Awards. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know as you jumpstart your day. I'm Charles Lejano. We begin today's Friday newscast with the University of the Philippines and the Defense Department holding a dialogue to discuss the revocation of the 1989 Accord. Meanwhile, new AFP Chief of Staff Cirilito Sobejana slammed NTF-ELCAC spokesperson Antonio Parlade for making unfounded claims against a journalist. Patricia Mangune has that story.
Nearly 3 weeks after the termination of the 1989 UP-DND Accord, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana and UP President Danilo Concepcion held a dialogue in Quezon City, facilitated by the Commission on Higher Education. This was just the first in a series of meetings the two parties will hold to discuss their way forward. So far, they have not agreed whether to revive the old accord or to craft a new one.
Nagkaroon sila ng parang subsequent dialogues pa. Pag-uusapan yung kung ano yung mga mechanics na gagawin. So, para naka-hold muna yung I don't know if that was the right.
Patuloy pa sir yung discussion.
So, the discussion will continue. I am not privy to the calendar kung anong schedule, but as far as I know, meron ng na-initiate na dialogue between the DND and the University of the Philippines.
As the Chief of Staff said, it was a cordial meeting between the Secretary of National Defense, Secretary Lorenzana, and President Danilo Concepcion. Sa pag-uusap na yon, nagkaroon sila ng pagkakataon na magkaroon ng paliwanagan, ng discussion, and pinag-usapan nila yung way forward. Way forward. And that way forward is patuloy na pag-uusap or engagement para makita kung ano pa ang pwedeng ma-develop, after that initial engagement. So initial pa lang yan at magkakaroon ng susunod na pag-uusap. At importante, nagkaroon sila ng pagkakataon na magkita, magkaharap, magkausap at magkaroon ng palitan ng puro-puro hinggil doon sa nangyaring abrogation.
Newly installed AFP Chief Lieutenant General Cirilito Sobejana said the AFP could hold similar talks with other educational institutions as well. He added that under his term, the armed forces will put a premium on obeying the rule of law and respecting human rights. He says he is also willing to look into the statements made by NTF-ELCAC spokesperson Antonio Parlade against a journalist. But ultimately, Sobejana said they must not make unfounded threats.
Hindi ko pa masyadong narinig yung kanyang latest interview. We will discuss this matter together. Of course, he is part of the armed forces, but for now, na-designate siya as spokesperson. So, reflective pa rin sa organization. But that's why we need to discuss all these things.
In a Facebook post, Parlade recently criticized a journalist from Inquirer.net, calling her a propagandist and accusing her of aiding terrorists by spreading lies for publishing a story on the Supreme Court petition of two Aitas where they complained of alleged torture by the military. The Justice and Court Reporters Association, in their statement, said Parlade unduly red-tagged the journalist and in effect put all of them in harm's way for simply doing their job, which is covering the justice beat. The group has also demanded an apology from Parlade. For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
President Rodrigo Duterte attended the change of command ceremony of the AFP over at Camp Crame for the very first time during the pandemic. This comes after General Gilbert Gapay retired as AFP's Chief of Staff following his 6 months of service. Duterte expressed his confidence in the capabilities of General Cirilito Sobejana to fulfill his duties as new AFP Chief of Staff. Sobejana appealed for the public's cooperation in the military's fight against enemies of the state.
I implore every Filipino to be one with every soldier sailor, airmen, marine, and civilian human resource of the armed forces of the Philippines in our fight against the enemies of the state. Rest assured that your soldiers, all your soldiers, airmen, sailors, and marines of the armed forces of the Philippines will do their job following the rule of law, give due respect to human rights, and strictly adhere to the provisions of the international humanitarian law. And in all that we do, we will exemplify the AAP's core values of honor, service, and patriotism.
One deed the public that despite our different circumstances, we're all still in the middle of a public health crisis.
Dapat po sana nating isipin na weighing the benefits versus the risk. Mas malaki pa rin po ang benepisyo na ating matatanggap kung tayo po ay magpapabakuna against COVID-19.
And although Montoya respects the decision of President Duterte and other officials to volunteer for vaccination to increase public confidence, he also believes that authorities should follow the vaccine prioritization plan.
Pero po, dapat nating isipin na meron tayong tinatawag na prioritization plan. Sabi natin, ang uunahin ay mga healthcare workers. So kung healthcare workers po, sana talagang uunahin natin ang healthcare workers. Hindi puro natin sinisino. Kung ikaw ay presidente, o mayor, o scientist.
Meanwhile, the Environment Department is urging local governments to have at least one yellow bin dedicated for the proper disposal of daily protective gear. These include face masks, face shields, latex gloves, and even PPEs that should be replaced regularly. In an interview, DENR Undersecretary Benny Antiporda said they have passed 2 resolutions to encourage local governments to install yellow bins in every facility and building to avoid the spread of COVID-19.
We need to be proactive on this. Na kami ho sa DNR, we are giving yellow bins already to the local government units na kahit paano ay kada isang barangay malagyan man lang po ng isang basurahan na dilaw na ito. Our main objective in this face mask, face shield, and this latex gloves is to protect lives.
Motorists are up in arms against the LTO's new vehicle testing process, which is conducted by a private third-party firm. They say the Bureau just made the entire process more expensive and complicated. Marian Enriquez has the rest of the story.
From seatbelts to windows, this private motor vehicle inspection center inspects every nook and cranny of this car. Under the Motor Vehicle Inspection System, or MVIS, the Land Transportation Office requires motorists to undergo a 70-point series of roadworthiness automated tests for vehicle registration. This is more complicated than the previous emission test requirement.
We are all conducting tests based on the standards of LTO, right? So if your vehicles are failing, it's not just the equipment, it's a vehicle that's the problem.
Under the LTO memorandum, a fee will be collected for inspection, 1,800 pesos for light vehicles and 600 pesos for motorcycles. A re-inspection fee, half the price, will be charged if the vehicle fails initial inspection. Ruben, who owns a 7-year-old Suzuki Alto, failed his first test. Results showed weak rear brake and problematic suspensions. He had to spend 3,140 pesos for repair.
Yun nga lang, nabigla kami kasi taghirap ngayon, may pandemya, biglang ang laki ng gastos. Bihira pala makakapasa rito.
LTO started implementing MVIS in 2018, but it was only October last year when private inspection centers were allowed to operate. The Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption questions the integrity of the equipment and testing procedure. Several motorists aired their complaints on social media about erroneous results. VACC President Boy Evangelista also alleges corruption.
Walang public consultation, pag walang public consultation, may corruption. Pag walang transparency, in the absence of transparency, merong korupsyon yan.
The group suggests for LTO to operate its own testing centers to minimize fees. LTO Chief Edgar Galvante clarifies that they do have 14 MVIS centers, but these need rehabilitating.
But we'll still pursuing kasi kahit na maitayo na yung mga MBICs na yan na tinayo ng private entities, kulang pa rin yan. Kaya gusto pa rin namin kung mabibigyan kami ng pondo.
For the Center for International Law, the government cannot allow private companies to conduct tests required for registration of vehicles. Deputy Executive Director Gilbert Andres says the LTO has exclusive mandate to exercise this regulatory function. He says those who have authorized this move may be charged for violating the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Galvante says they are open for complaints.
Kung may nakita silang taliwas doon siguro na hindi inaalaw ng batas, siguro pwede niyang filean ng complaint.
Senator Grace Poe will conduct an inquiry into the operations of PMVICs. VACC, meanwhile, is planning to file a temporary restraining order before the Supreme Court. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Here are the biggest stories from the dailies. President Duterte has ordered a crackdown on smugglers, profiteers, and hoarders of food commodities. Filipino Star ngayon reports that the Agriculture and Trade Departments received the President's marching orders, which comes on the heels of ballooning market prices of pork and chicken. The Cabinet then approved the creation of a new government sub-task force on economic intelligence, who will go after so-called market manipulators. Pangmasa reports that President Duterte has given the green light for the extension of the no power disconnection policy until the end of the month. During the Cabinet meeting at Malacanang yesterday, Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi said the DOE is exhausting all efforts and options to protect consumers amid the ongoing pandemic. According to the agency, Duterte has approved all the recommended measures presented by the DOE, including installment payment options for low-income users or lifeliners. And this from the Philippine Star, the Liberal Party is considering Vice President Leni Robredo as their presidential candidate for the 2022 polls. That is, according to party president Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Although Pangilinan did say they have not yet discussed next year's elections since they are focused on providing economic and livelihood assistance to Filipinos affected by the pandemic. Fast break now to some sports news. We're bringing you some more volleyball action right here on Cignal TV. The Premier Volleyball League has signed a 3-year deal with Cignal and its multiple on-air and digital platforms. In a statement, Cignal TV and TV5 President and CEO Robert Galang said this new partnership seeks to provide a, quote, unrivaled sports viewing for fans of the game. One Sports will air PVL games live on free-to-air, while One Sports Plus on Cignal TV will feature HD matches. All games will be streamed simultaneously on Cignal Play. The 2021 Golden Globe nominations are well underway, and Netflix is leading the pack for the most number of recommendations. MJ Marfori with the details.
Netflix outdid itself. From 17 nominations last year, the streaming giant emerged dominant in the recent Golden Globe TV nominations with 20 nods. It secured 3 of 5 nominations for the Best Drama TV Series, including crime thriller Ozark.
What do you want? I want to see her again. I want to see my kids again.
Here is the stuff of which fairy tales are made.
And The Crown, the British royal drama, is on top with 6 nominations.
I'm begging you, God. I'm begging you. Please, God. Please. Protect him.
Its closest competitor, HBO, is far behind with 7 nominations, banking on horror series The Lovecraft Country.
Okay, listen, I did go out last night. I'm a little bit hungover. I don't want to get into it. It's not a big deal.
HBO Max scored 2. Disney's Hulu earned 6.
Thank you, Robert. There is value in these motels.
Little-known Pop TV earned 5, all for its Canadian comedy, Schitt's Creek. People turn to streaming as their main source of entertainment as theaters have to shut down due to the pandemic. Winners will be announced in a televised ceremony on February 28. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Here are the stories to watch out for later today. The PSA will be releasing the country's inflation data for January 2021. After the Defense Department, the University of the Philippines will be holding a dialogue with the DILG to discuss their 1992 accord. And the Transportation Department will be showing the cutter head of the first tunnel boring machine that will be used for the Metro Manila subway project. And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us later at 10 a.m. as we monitor the day's biggest stories from sunrise to sundown. You can also catch One News on the Cignal Play app. Just register for a free account at www.cignalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. We're One News.